Richmond, north of Richmond, Lord knows they all just want to have total control. Living in
That is such a valuable piece of advice there.
These are the sorts of things that we should talk about right in the first 5 minutes of the podcast.
Started giving people free quotes.
In sunshine and rainbows, it is
Definitely a thing for just being a solo
The
operator.
change in mindset makes a massive difference.
Welcome to Aussie LawnStars.
Welcome to the dungeon, Joel. How are you doing?
Very excited to be here. I've heard so much about it.
Yeah, it's a really glorious place, isn't it? Some people might say it's scary.
It's a lot more colourful than I assumed it would be.
I'm wearing my high vis too at the moment, so it really stands out. This is my work clothes, and it makes me feel like I'm doing something useful today.
Yeah, I'm doing the same. I've been in the office all day, but I'm still in my work gear.
Yeah, well, we've had a fair bit of rain the last week or two, and it's been bucketing down today, so decent rainfall, and I think the rest of the week's going to be the same, so I might have to try and get a couple more interviews in.
Yeah, that's the good thing about it. Like when people ask, how do you have time for it? That's when you make time when you can't do something else.
Yeah, and my answer is I go to work early, start at 7 o'clock in the morning or even 6 o'clock in the morning, and then I'm home at 3 o'clock in the afternoon ready to capture your beautiful face on camera.
Yeah, it's like a hobby. So I do it after work most of the time as well, so 4 o'clock, so same deal.
Yeah, it's the way to do it. And if you start right on 4, you're done by dinner time, hopefully.
Yeah, but unfortunately also pays as much as a hobby.
That's it, isn't it? But we were talking last week. I jumped on and did a quick interview on your podcast, and that was good. We were talking a little bit about numbers, and hopefully Luke's listening to this and we can rib him about it. You know, we've got better numbers than you, Luke, and we're coming for you.
Yeah, we're not a big fish in a small pond.
No, not at all. But the other one, I did the interview with Clint Adams last week, and he said he's coming for you. I'm not sure what that means, whether it means he's after your podcast or just after your beautiful face.
It's probably more likely to be a physical attack rather than the podcast, because he's no good at podcasting, so there's no chance of doing that.
Well, I believe he does one and then leaves it for a month or so and then comes back and does another one. Or it's not consistently 1 month, though. It's like 6 weeks here, 2 weeks there, 5 days here.
Yep. There was a time where we were pretty similar in terms of the numbers we'd put out, numbers of episodes. I think he might have been around the 50 or something, and I was 70, high 70s.
Yeah.
So I thought he was going to catch up to me then. And I think he's done maybe 4 podcasts since then, and I've done another 100.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, and I think when I first talked to Clint, I chased him earlier in my podcasting days because I knew he'd been doing it before me. And I might have put out about 60 or 70 at the time, and he'd put out about 20 less than me. And I was like, whoa.
Yeah. I remember commenting on his iTunes page about how exciting it was to see a landscaping podcast from Australia.
Yeah.
And that was 2018. So he did start a while ago.
He certainly did. I know I've been listening to them for longer than that, but it took me probably 5 years of thinking and deliberating about it before COVID struck and I had knee surgery, and I was like, all right, let's start podcasting. Perfect
timing.
Yeah, definitely. It's that COVID's around. Knee surgery means I'm going to be sitting at home for a week. It was pretty minor knee surgery, so I was back at work a week later. But yeah, it launched me.
Yeah, if you have any knee surgery when you're self-employed, you're back at work a week later anyway.
It's funny. I told the workers' comp insurer, I said, look, it's winter time. You can approve the surgery through winter. I will not take any time off work. I can work in the office for the week that I will be off work, and then I'll be back on light duties, which I'm in control of. But if you delay approving it until summertime, I'm going to probably be off work for 3 months.
All right.
They approved it on the spot.
Nice.
Yeah, when you know how to speak their language.
Yep.
Yeah. So, Joel, this isn't about me. This one's about you, and we want to know all about you. So I hope you're feeling nice and cozy and comfy in the dungeon. We've got the fire cranking.
It's perfect timing for it too, with winter only about 3 weeks away.
That's it. I've been looking for firewood at the moment, scouring around, and all right, got to get my supplies back where they should be. Should have done that 6 months ago, but anyway. We're in balmy New South Wales here. It's not like Victoria.
Yeah. Well, could be worse if we're in Tasmania. So you take it positive when they come.
Yeah, my brother's in Tassie. I'll just leave it there. He can be down there. I'll go and visit him once every year or two.
At least it looks nice though down there.
Well, he's on a beef farm on the northwest. If you know anything about Tasmania, the northwest is bitterly cold.
Yeah, right.
Gets the winds and it just hops everything with the weather. So, yeah, he can have it.
Yeah.
So, Joel, you're in Victoria, and when I was talking to you on your podcast, I said, you must be in Melbourne, right? And you're like, no, not really.
It's one of those things. To most people, it's a minor thing, but it's one of my bugbears when people say that we're in Melbourne.
Yeah.
Because we're in a different suburb, like not a different suburb, but a different city. So it's like saying that being in Newcastle is in Sydney, and same with like Wollongong. Like they're close, but they're not. And different people come from Melbourne as well.
Yeah, of course. So I've been through Victoria, and I know I've got quite a few listeners in Victoria, but I really don't know my geography in Victoria. I'm like, if I'm coming down to Victoria, I'm probably heading down the Hume Highway. I might stop off at Lilydale because I've got friends around there, and I might go down to Geelong to catch a ferry across to visit my brother. So you're down that way somewhere, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm in Geelong. Yeah,
in Geelong.
Yeah.
So it is a city pretty much all on its own, yeah?
Correct, yeah. It's the second biggest in Victoria behind Melbourne, obviously. There's a population of, I think it's about 250 to 300,000, somewhere around that.
Yeah. Yeah, last time I was in Geelong was 40 degrees waiting to get on the boat. And I was on my motorbike, and the air conditioning on a motorbike is not quite the same as when you're in a car.
Yeah, you've got all your leathers on.
Oh, yeah. So looking good in the leathers, but sweating like a pig. But yeah, so I'm guessing Geelong cops all of the weather like everywhere else in Victoria. You get the wild temperature extremes and rainfall and sunshine all in one day.
Yeah, there's certain areas that are cop it worse than others because they're more on the surf coast. So we've got the bay, like Port Phillip Bay. There's a lot of Geelongs in that as well, so it's the winds don't get as bad on there. But but there's a lot of open plains as well. So yeah, there's certain areas that they're just windy all the time.
Yeah, okay. So I interviewed another guy recently, Remy Willems, and he was working around Melbourne, and then he moved up between Ballarat and Bendigo. And he's worked for a couple of landscaping pros and then went out on his own. So his business is mostly garden maintenance and hedge trimming. And he's a pretty awesome guy to go and meet. After I interviewed him, I went down there and met him and actually did a little bit of work with him so I could learn a few of his tricks from hedge trimming. But you've been in landscaping all of your business career, right?
Pretty much, yeah. I had a bit of a spell part of the way through. I went and worked at a bank. But
okay.
Obviously, it's as you do when you're a landscaper.
Yeah.
But yeah, I started when I was 21 and then, been in it since then, apart from 2.5 years where I was at the bank, but also doing stuff on weekends and days off. So been landscaping the whole time, but just with a bit of a spell where it wasn't 100% focused.
Yeah, fair enough. So when you went into banking, did you go into investment banking or sitting at the teller handing out money?
Yeah, I started at the teller and then worked my way up into doing like credit cards and personal loans and then worked my way up into business banking. And I was seeing people coming in, running their own business who had no idea what they were doing.
Yeah.
And I thought, maybe I can do it again and have a crack at it and have a bit more of a vision. Because it was I stopped 3 years after taking over the business. And as most people do when they start a new job, they just say yes to everything and they've got no goals of what they're going for. They just want to work with themselves, thinking they're going to make all this money. Yeah. And then, you don't have a plan at all. So it was actually good having time out to actually realize that I do love doing it. Yeah. But I just wanted to have a goal of things to work towards. So when I got back in, I had clear goals that I worked towards and it was pretty cool when I achieved them as well.
Now, if you were to start out in a maintenance business, you might start with the 3 tools, mower, blower, whippersnipper, or you might venture into gardening and have a hedge trimmer and a couple of hand tools as well. But typically speaking, if you start in the maintenance business and you take a break like you did, it's not a major cost to get in. So it's not a major thing to leave or come and go. Whereas for you, it would have been a lot more invested in it, I'm guessing.
A little bit. Like I still kept, like I didn't sell any tools or anything. I had a shed that I was hiring with previously,
Yeah.
and but yeah, everything was kept in my trailer. I can't even. It's so long ago now. I can't even remember where I kept my trailer.
Yeah.
Because I just had a storage shed. Might have just I think that's what I did. So I had a shed, like a good size shed. I could have vehicles and everything in, and then I got one of those like Storage King storage sheds and put everything in there
Fair
when
enough.
I wasn't using it as much. So I was still. That's why it was hard to still kind of do a little bit of landscaping as well, because
Yeah.
those expenses are still 100% of what the expenses are, even though
Yeah.
you're not working 100% of what you're doing. So
Yeah.
it wasn't a very profitable time of my life.
But it's probably a good thing that you stayed in it, though, right? Because it kept you up to speed with the industry, kept your tools working and functioning, and kept you with your mind in it, so you're ready to go back again.
Yeah, definitely. I still did some good jobs in there as well, and kept all
Yeah.
the contacts that I've been making. So
Yeah.
it worked out pretty well. And also learnt a lot by working at the bank, because it was the Commonwealth Bank, so they obviously spend millions of dollars in how to do marketing and how to treat customers. So I learned a lot about that.
Yeah, the Commonwealth Bank, whether you love them or hate them, they're one of the biggest in Australia. So, yeah, you can't go too far wrong if you're working for them.
Yeah, it's fascinating, because I know like some of my mates works at banks as well, and talking to them about all the different ins and outs of what they do.
Yeah,
and the Commonwealth is right up there with technology and everything. So it was a good place to be.
I had a bit of a gripe against the Commonwealth going back a few years now. I did a job for a really elderly customer, and I'm in closer to Newcastle, Lake Macquarie. This customer was based in Sydney, elderly lady, and her daughter was doing the liaising with me to get this job done. It's an overgrown property, and I went in and just cleaned it up, and then maintained it. And when I said do a bank deposit, she's like, "Oh, okay." And it was through the Commonwealth Bank, and they charged her an international transfer fee and me an international transfer fee to transfer money from her account over to my account, because I'm not with the Commonwealth Bank. And this is all because the elderly lady and her daughter couldn't access internet banking. And I was like, surely of all the banks, the Commonwealth Bank could handle that seamlessly and make it painless instead of painful.
Yeah, it's one of those things, like when you go somewhere like there's an ad about it at the moment, I think, but when you go somewhere to buy something, and you want to change the preset thing that you're buying, and then they'll say, well, there's no button on the register for that. So I can't do it. It's similar to that. Like, there's no way of the people in the branch doing basic things like that.
Yeah, that's literally what it was, because she had to go into the branch and say transfer money into an account for another bank. And they like, we can't do that.
Yeah. Well, as I started moving up the ranks, I started getting towards more the needing to be a lot more political and that sort of thing about things you could say and do, and that's why I stopped enjoying it as much.
Yeah, fair enough. Do you want to leave your job to create a profitable and enjoyable lawn and garden business? Aussie LawnStars shares the stories, lessons and advice to help you grow a healthy, productive, efficient and sustainable business. Do you want more, or simply have a question about what you heard? Contact Aussie LawnStars at iCloud.com, or look me up, Gary Ashton, on Facebook and Messenger for individual help. Business coaching helps you to have the right mindset and perspective when it comes to daily decision making, planning, or knowing what to look for to improve your business. thinktankcoaching.com.au has helped me, and they can help you move towards your business goals. Visit their website or email them, thinktankcoaching@outlook.com. If you want to establish the best practices in bookkeeping, accounting and business structure, contact Adrian from Prosper Financial on 0249 773363. And you all need to head to Lawn Mowing Contractors Australia and the Australian Professional Lawn Contractors Facebook groups for supportive communities focused on our industry. In your landscaping business, when you started, did you have, because you bought it from somebody else, did you have vision of the types of jobs and the size jobs you were taking on, or was that something you had to work out as you learnt and went back into banking and then come back out again?
Yeah, it's kind of something I learned in the first 3 years after taking over the business. So I was an apprentice with the business and then got qualified, and then told my boss I was going to go out on my own. And then he said, how about you take over the business? So I said, yeah, sounds good. Because I'd sort of treated it like my own anyway. Like, so all the suppliers knew me So it was a good way to do it. So we set out a plan over 6 months, I think it was, or 6 or 12 months, where he'd start any calls that came in, he would get me. We started both going out there together to quote them, and then I ended up quoting them, so that they were going to be jobs that I was taking on. So it was like a real transition period. So then I took over and worked. I think I took over in November, on the 9th of November, and I worked like 40. I think it's 48 days straight because I said yes to too many things, and had to have things finished by Christmas. So probably not that. Yeah, I think it was it was about that anyway. But that was the start. And then so the first 3 years I was just saying yes to every job, not really having any vision about anything. But then just learnt the type of jobs I wanted to do, and then targeted the business to that when I got back into it in 2015. And to get back into it, even though I'd been going the whole time, I still had to build up work again. So I started doing maintenance at the time as well.
Okay, yeah. So, help me understand this. When I've talked to people about landscaping, there is so much variety. And I guess like lawn mowing and gardening, you can come in at the cowboy end where you come in with the cheapest possible tools, and you can go all the way through to running a really high-end business, multiple employees, all the various different things that go into it. But in landscaping, I think the smallest landscaping jobs I would see would be a case of laying a little bit of turf or a couple of stepping stones, like not even a full paving, just, put a couple of stones across here so I can put my whiz bin on one, or another one here so I can step in between the grass.
Yeah.
You get those odd jobs that come in like that. I had one request once to lay a tiny little bit of concrete, and I looked at it, and I don't do concrete, obviously, and I hummed and hawed about it. And they found somebody else to do it. Good, great, good outcome for me. But all those sorts of things come up for people who are in maintenance like myself. But I guess the defining moment that would say, all right, you're actually a landscaping company, would be where you're qualified like you are, licensed, and you're able to define clearly what sector you're working in terms of the size jobs you're doing, the types of work that you do in those jobs.
Yeah, it's a tricky one because there's a bit of crossover between what maintenance people would do and landscapers. Because there's certain things that, like, there'll be some maintenance folks who'll be lane steppers, like they might have that skill set. And the best landscaper I know isn't qualified, so he just started as a labourer and got experience, and then never ended up doing an apprenticeship. Yeah, so it's more about experience than. And he's got his building license now for structural landscaping, so
okay,
he's got ticked all the right boxes, but just technically not qualified. But if you've got the enough experience, that can be better than being qualified. So
there you go.
The qualification at the end of the day is a piece of paper, because you're going to learn a lot more on the job than what you will at school.
Yep, and the licensing is just a little bit better than the qualification, right? Because the licensing gives you the comfort that you can say to your customers, I'm certified in this field, not just qualified, but certified to provide you with quality assurance and guarantees and various different aspects like that.
Yeah, it varies from state to state. And I know even in Western Australia, they don't even have apprenticeships over there, I'm pretty sure, in terms of landscaping. So
wow,
you can't even do an apprenticeship from what I understand.
Yeah.
So there's certainly no licensing either over there. But I know in Queensland, it's a lot easier. It's easier to get your building license for landscaping.
Okay.
New South Wales and Victoria are a lot harder. And then South Australia is really complex because you've got to get a license for paving, a license for deck building, license for retaining walls, like a license, heaps of different licenses.
Yeah.
Unless you get the unlimited one. So it varies a lot in terms of how the licensing works in each state.
Yeah, and I've heard all sorts of crazy things around licensing, and one of the ones that will come up in the maintenance industry all the time is, are you licensed to spray chemicals? And the short answer in New South Wales is no. You're not going to find a maintenance business that is licensed to spray chemicals, because the license is not actually for a maintenance business. The license is for a spraying business that is dedicated to running around offering spray services in agriculture and those sorts of places.
Yeah, I don't know how it works in Victoria, but I do know there's a certificate you can get, like
Yeah.
but whether that's, and I think that might be more to buy them, to
Well,
be able to buy certain chemicals.
the differentiation between licensing and certificates is the certificate says you're trained in how to apply chemicals. The license says you are approved by the government to apply chemicals on an agricultural basis or a large amount basis. So if they see words like motorized sprayer listed in, do you need to be licensed? And nowadays you've got a little backpack sprayer that's got electric system and it's motorized, right? But that's not actually what they refer to. They're referring to 750 litre tanks and 1,000 litre tanks that have got a petrol engine sitting on the side of them.
Yeah, yeah. There's a lot of grey areas in the construction side of the licensing as well. So,
Yeah.
like you can do a 200, like because in Victoria, it's you need to be a licensed landscaper if the works are being done in conjunction with the renovation or build of a new home. So if you could do a $15,000 project, and it could just be turf and plants,
Yeah.
and if it's at the same time as a house is getting built or renovated, you need to be a licensed landscaper to do it.
Yeah.
Whereas if you could do a $250,000 job and have a massive paving area, and if the house is nothing touching the house, like no work's being done on it, you don't need to be registered for it.
Yeah. Okay.
So yeah, it's a lot of ridiculous things, but
Yeah. So around here, when I've inquired about different things, it's been a case of going, all right, if I'm spraying 20 litres of mixed chemical at once, I need to have the Chem Cert, which is the certificate to say I've been trained. If I'm using more than 5 litres of concentrate at once, then I need to have the Chem Cert, but I still don't need a license. And then the other one that came up, pressure washing, because maintenance businesses will often go and do some pressure washing. And it's like, okay, if you do a pressure washing job on a driveway, it used to be the case if it was over $1,000 worth of work on one job, then you had to be licensed to do it. So, if I was doing a large mowing job, that could be $1,000. If I was doing a pressure washing job on a driveway, that could be $1,000. And now they've bumped that a little bit. So it's not at that $1,000 limit because they realised that every man and his dog was doing $1,000 jobs.
Mm.
And the licensing was partly to protect people from an immigrant coming in with no skills, no qualifications at all, and taking $5,000 and then not delivering on the job. But we've got cowboys in every industry. So I think looking at that, if I start going, all right, pressure washing, you might need to be licensed if you're doing massive jobs. Paving, retaining walls, irrigation, and a whole bunch of different things. Like you said, some of the places that they have their own individual license, some of it just falls under the landscape builder's license.
Yeah, like you can see, like you and I have been in both industries for a long time, and it's not black and white for us. So you can imagine people who are just getting into the industry how hard it is and why there's so much confusion.
Well, I guess the easy thing is if you're getting in the industry is to go, oh yeah, I can do that 2 square meters of concreting, or that little paver repair, or a retaining wall repair, or a sprinkler repair. Doesn't matter. And then somebody will go, well, if you can do the repair, can you do this 5 square meters paving under my patio that I haven't done? And then can you do concrete my driveway, or can you set up a full irrigation system? And sorry, Luke, it's not a reticulation system; it's an irrigation system. And it very quickly crosses that border of where you should be licensed. I think talking to a few people, licensing for retaining walls is really interesting because if you skirt around the issue of licensing, you can go, did that retaining wall get an engineering certificate? I don't need the license to get the engineering certificate. It gets sent off to an engineer for that. Am I providing the engineering certificate? No, the customer gets that. And then I can just do the labour for that job, right?
Yeah, retaining walls are another bag of treats to find all the different legislations behind it, because if you're like, this is Victoria rules, but if I was doing a deck somewhere in the backyard, for example, because I have to get a permit for that, if there's on the plans that I submit, if it shows there's a retaining wall in the front yard, and this happened to me, it was just a 200 mil high retaining wall.
Yeah.
I had to get a permit for that retaining wall because it's on the same plans as a permitted work.
Even though it already exists?
No, we were going to have to build. We were building a retaining wall as well.
Oh, okay, yep. Yeah,
so
okay.
the building surveyor just told me to take it off, and then you don't have to do it. But yeah, it's just things like that. It's just
Yeah.
because there's basically they've written their rules and they have to follow the exact rules the way that they've been written. So
if you were doing a 200 mil high retaining wall on its own, you don't have to tell anybody. But if it's on the plan with your deck,
well, if that retaining wall is within a metre of the boundary, then you do have to again. There's so many insane rules. It's mind blowing.
So say I want to put a retaining wall out the front of my property, and I know I'm not in Victoria, right? But if I want to put a retaining wall out the front of my property, I'm doing it myself. I'm not going to ask you. I'm not going to ask the council. I'm not going to ask the government. I'm not going to ask fair trading. I'm just going to go out there and do it. But if it's close to the front boundary of the property, or it's over a certain height, or you're using footings instead of just putting it down on quarter minus, all those sorts of things can change. Does it change it for me just as a homeowner doing it myself, or is it because you're a builder landscaper?
No, it doesn't matter who's doing it. You still got to follow the same rules. And a lot of people who don't have their building license try and say, the owner can do it as part on an owner builder application, but that's more sort of being like a general contractor organising all the different contracts. You still need to, if the work has to be done by someone who's registered, then it has to be done by someone who's registered. So they can't build a deck themselves.
Yeah, fair. And there's a lot of things that can go wrong. If you're doing a retaining wall or a deck and you don't know what you're doing, you can end up with an absolute disaster.
Yeah. But the good thing is, well, not the good thing, but the people who might have done something that they should have got a permit for in Victoria, if it's there for 7 years, then you're fine when you sell the house.
Yeah, okay.
So,
yeah, okay. So you've got loads of experience here, and I'm just waffling on about things I don't really know anything about. And I think you've taken these sorts of jobs and built your business around it. So your reputation is built around making gardens, designing gardens, and installing gardens. So what would you say is the main, like if you could capture into one job and go, all right, the main type of work I'm looking for is a garden for a new subdivision, back of their yard or front yard, and it's this size garden, or a budget of $20,000, $50,000. Is there something that helps you to identify what customers you want and which ones you don't want?
The ones we want are ones who are either going to get us to design their project or have got someone else who has designed it.
Yeah, okay.
Because they're paying, like our designs are about $4,500. Yeah. And we're one of the cheaper designers that we work for. So
yeah, okay.
Other people are paying 3 times that to get just the design done. And there's others that will pay like upwards of $30,000 just for the design. So they're the people we want to be working for, because they're spending that much. If they can appreciate the value in a design, then they're going to appreciate the actual work getting done. And our average job is around $150,000. So we've got one we're starting tomorrow, which is I think 7 or 8, and that's still factored into the average is 150. So there's ones that are 300 or 400 as well. Yeah,
okay. So if the average is $150,000, is that like a quarter acre block or a 200 square meter backyard?
They vary. That's all sizes. So whereas the bigger ones are the bigger projects, and then the smaller ones are sort of might be around 70 or 80. But it depends if there's a pool in there, that adds a lot, because you've got the pool fence and the paving and all the different things that come with that.
Yeah, that adds up pretty quickly. I've got a pool in my backyard, and every time you want to do anything with pool fencing and paving around there, it's expensive.
Yeah. Like there's a designer who I'm a big fan of. He told me in the early days that if someone's getting a pool in, you'll tell them that the landscaping will cost double what the pool costs, because when you factor in all the different things that you've got to get with the pool, that's what you want to allow for. If you're wanting a decent landscape around the pool, not just the basics.
Yeah. Yeah, I won't show you what my pool looks like.
Landscaping probably wasn't double the pool cost.
My pool was put in 1988, and I didn't own the place then. And anyway. Definitely wasn't a priority when they did it.
Yeah. But that's the thing, like I tell clients when we're doing designs that they should just do what they want to do over a longer period of time rather than what they can afford at the time.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, because especially if you're going to be living there for a long time, because then you want to enjoy it over a 5 or 10 year period.
Yeah.
So rather than just doing what you can do in this 12-month period, just do a little bit now that you can afford, and then do some more later, but have a plan to work towards.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. A lot of people have been asking about which brand of battery tool to buy, and I don't like to recommend one brand of battery for everyone or every situation. Dealer support and access to parts and service all play a big role in that decision. Some brands have better tools for specific needs or each product category. I've been using a variety of brands, and I endeavour to provide unbiased interviews on Aussie LawnStars with as many of those product brands as possible. I reached out to Ego Power Plus through the podcast because of how Barry supports the industry and Ego owners. Barry has impressed me with his loyalty to customers in providing support and listening to the needs of the industry, which has resulted in a full lineup of new commercial tools landing in Australia over the last 12 months that has positioned Ego as a leader in the commercial tool space for outdoor power equipment. Visit egopowerplus.com.au to see if they have the tools you need today. Yes, my yard is almost 1,600 square metres, and the backyard there's there's 600 square metres of lawn beside the pool, plus massive big 12 metre by 12 metre shed behind that. So,
And you got a cylinder mower, or do you just keep them in Western Australia?
look, I actually own a cylinder mower, and I used it for a little while before I discovered robotic mowers.
Yeah, right.
And the robotic mower does a better job.
Oh,
So,
really?
If Luke Smith is listening, yeah, but robotic mowers are better than cylinder mowers.
A little bit less maintenance too, from what I know.
Well, when I was doing it with a cylinder mower, I was cutting it 2 or 3 times a week. And it would take me a good solid hour to do my backyard and get it all looking nice.
Yeah, right. And then how often are you sharpening it?
The cylinder mower?
Yeah.
Not very often.
Not as often as you should have been.
Well, I'm not a West Australian, so I certainly wasn't taking it as a fine art to make sure that it was sharpened. I've talked to a number of guys in West Australia about backlapping them and grinding them and all those sorts of things. And I'm like, oh, I'm learning a lot.
Yeah, I was looking at getting one for my lawn. Like, I've only got probably 70 square metres, and
Yeah.
I was thinking of getting one, but then I saw the amount of maintenance you got to do to them if you're wanting them to be, razor sharp. Well, no, I'll just do my rotary mower.
Yeah.
I'm
Well,
okay
I think the guys in WA will shoot me when they hear this, but if you do a good backlap and then you check it with a piece of paper and it's cutting reasonably well, then it's good to go for probably, given that it's only doing 1 yard and like I said, 600 square metres of grass, then you could probably get away with doing that every 3 to 6 months. But if you're in West Australia, no. You've got to have a Mowmaster, and you don't backlap. You rotate your cylinders out, and you use your good cylinder for cutting your grass for, I can't remember if it was like a month or 2, and then they rotate that out to the other one, and they have had the other one ground because backlapping doesn't do a sufficient good cut as compared to grinding it.
Yeah, right.
So,
Yeah, I don't even sharpen my own chainsaw, so I've got no chance of having to do a cylinder mower.
yeah, well, I do sharpen my own chainsaw, but I find that it's a good idea to buy a new chain every now and then anyway. But you can't do that with a cylinder. You can't just go, oh, yeah, it's been a couple of years, I'll just go out and buy a new cylinder.
Yeah.
Yeah, different story.
Yeah.
But yeah, the robotic mower, on the other hand, it's out there cutting daily. So in summertime, when you've got high growth and you have the mower cutting daily, it's only taking tiniest little bit of grass off the top. It's just going straight back into the ground as mulch clippings, and it looks the same every day.
Yeah, we've got a project where we did, I reckon it would have been 130 metres of Sir Walter Buffalo lawn, and the client's got a robot mower doing it. Yep. And it looks amazing. It's immaculate.
Yeah. Well, the best way to do it with the robot mower is to get it to cut on its lowest setting. So if you have the right grass and you cut it on its lowest setting and it keeps on top of it, then it looks like a bowling green, just without stripes, which some people don't like. They'd much rather have their stripes. I get that. But at the same time, if it doesn't have stripes and it just looks like carpet, it's sensational.
Yeah, you want people asking if it's fake lawn.
Yep, it happens.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just went and did a because it's for people listening to this, it's early May at the moment. So end of April, I grabbed a bag of Oxifert and did a pre-emergent and fertilizer. The Oxifert is all in one granular. Spread that over my lawn, and it has just come up nice and green. It was already pretty good, but it really greened up the lawn coming into winter, so it just looks sensational.
And what have you got?
Oh, I've got a bit of everything. I live in a place where the properties have been in for, I think this place was built in the 80s, early 80s or late 70s. So there is no such thing as a pure buffalo turf here. If you go into the new subdivision, it'll be all one turf. But here I've got a bit of buffalo, I've got a bit of kikuyu, I've got a bit of cooch. And, all the winter weeds and the oxalis and the clover and everything in the middle of it. So, yeah. So, yeah, I do a broadleaf treatment on my lawn. And this year I was like, all right, I'm going to do the Oxifert, and that should reduce the need to do that broadleaf treatment coming into July. So, be interesting to see how it goes.
Yeah, it's something I'm wanting to get better at is knowing how to look after a lawn, because like we'll install it and then clients will say, oh, what should we do now and how do we look after it and what do we put on it, and I don't know, because it's a specialised thing doing maintenance, so we can't know everything.
If you're bored one day, go through my back catalogue of episodes and look up the one with Wally Pearce from ICL. We talked a lot about what to do to look after a lawn, and he is a guru. Like I might think I know what I'm doing, but I know nothing compared to Wally.
Yeah.
So
you know enough to know you don't know enough.
Well, I can tell you to fertilise your lawn and do a broadleaf treatment.
Yeah.
But things like going, all right, let's put a pre-emergent down so it stops those broadleafs from actually growing in the first place. It stops these seeds from germinating. It's like, oh, that's taking it to the next level. And then there's so many other things you can do.
Yeah, we've got a fella, Sean from Pure Turf Lawns and Gardens, who looks after a lot of our gardens.
Yeah.
After we build them, and yeah, he's a wizard with lawn. Like he's cutting tall fescue. I think he's cutting it at 20 mil or 12, something insane. And he's used growth regulators and all sorts of different things on there.
Yeah, awesome. Sounds like he's the man to know what he's doing when you need to ask him about your own.
Yeah, I probably should get him to come out and talk to the client about what to do.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's one of the things that works really well in my industry. I'm sure in your industry, like you've already said, the fact that you've got him on your books doing work for you, that's good indication. But going to other people who are experts in a niche is a great way to look like you know more than you know. And to keep your clients happy.
And you also learn from it as well.
Yeah, definitely. Well, that's, like I said, I learned a lot from talking to Wally Pearce. I don't know anything compared to what he knows, but I've learned so much just from that one conversation with him. So, Joel, how many years have you been in business now? And when did you first start?
So I've been landscaping for 20 years this year.
Yeah.
And I took over the business in 2009. So 15 it'll be 15 years at the end of the year.
Yeah.
And then 2012 to 15 I was at the bank as well. And then since 2015 in March I've been flat out hardcore landscaping for myself then. So that's the real business where I had actual vision of what the projects that I wanted to work on, and then made a plan about how to do that and executed it.
So that's about 9 years since you did that, 2015.
Yep.
Okay, so how many employees do you have?
I've got 2 qualified guys, a first year apprentice, a school based apprentice,
okay,
and a landscape architect. So the school based apprentice only works 1 day a week.
Yeah, fair. They got to spend time in school.
Yeah, but he's pretty handy though, so he goes pretty well.
That's what you want. Yeah, okay.
And so me on top of that as well.
Yeah. So you got a landscape architect that does your designs for you.
Yep.
Yeah, awesome. So how did you go when you first started? You would have been working for the other person before you bought the business. Did you go straight into having employees?
Yeah, so I took over one apprentice who was already working for us. So there was, just the one, but I wasn't a big fan, so it didn't last too long. So then I put on my own one, and then got frustrated that other people don't work as fast as me for some reason.
That's a common experience.
Yeah, I don't know why, because sure they're only getting paid a quarter of what I'm getting, but they should still work as hard as what I was.
Yeah, why not?
That was my expectation, and I ended up cracking it with employees. So I went for a period where I wasn't working with any and doing it all myself, and then in a shocking turn of events, I hurt my back trying to do everything myself. So
It makes it hard.
I should have someone else give me a hand.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was the last time that I'd ever worked without employees.
Yeah. Okay. So by now you'd have a pretty good handle on how to keep employees, how to make sure they're happy and you're getting what you need out of them.
Not sure how I'd do it. Because I've got one guy who's been with me for it'll be 9 years in August.
Yeah.
And another one, he'll be 7 years in October, I think. So, the two qualified guys have been with me a while. They started with me as mature age apprentices. They weren't that old, but technically they are mature age apprentices.
Yeah.
But one of the guys who's been with me 9 years, he's kept a record of everyone who I've put on since he started. And there's been like 35 people or something. So,
yeah.
So I don't know that I have the plans on how to keep people, but two of them have stayed. So.
Look, I think that's a really interesting point that you've raised there, because if you talk to people like Luke Smith about employing people, it is really a case of going through a large number of wannabes and a large number of casuals and finding the, what's the right word? Finding the gold in the haystack.
Yeah.
You got to find those gems, and they are far and few between.
Yeah, like some of the ones who worked for me and then I got rid of, some have gone on to work for other people and like are doing it years later. Not many, but because of the work that we want to be doing, not everyone who could be a landscaper could work for us, which sounds a bit pretentious, but there's some people who can just go out and work in commercial landscaping, just spreading mulch and putting plants in, and that's technically landscaping. So that's what they're a lot more suited to, rather than doing high detail work that we do.
Yeah, and I think that's the sort of work which a lot of maintenance companies will end up doing, is going, okay, it's winter time, I've got a couple of commercial sites or industrial sites, I'm going to capitalise on the work I've got there and offer to put mulch in the garden beds, replace a few plants that need replacing, those sorts of jobs that come up. And I know I've done quite a few jobs like that. I've done small turf jobs and various different things as well. But yeah, those sorts of jobs are often run between the maintenance businesses and the landscaping businesses.
Yeah. I've actually had a few maintenance folks reach out to me and they were asking if there was a course that they could do to add to their skill set. Yeah. Because like Sean, who we use, he gets asked to do a couple of different things that they might be a bit small for us to go and do.
Yeah.
But he's there already anyway, so I think, can you do this? So I end up, it would have been better for me to come on after I'd started the course, but I'm in the process of making a course teaching people how to do landscaping so that they can do it.
Okay.
The basic things.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a big market out there for it because a lot of people are wanting to add it to their repertoire.
Yeah. So with putting a course together like that, is that targeting the basics mostly so that it gives people enough information to be able to go, okay, if somebody calls me and asks me for a job, if it's like just putting mulch out, I can do that fairly easy. If it's a small repair on a job, I can do it fairly easy. But if it's the full design and it's going to be up around $100,000, I might just send that to Joel because that's getting out of my league.
Yeah, it won't be it'll be unlikely that anyone who does the course is going to be doing that size project. It's more for DIYs and garden maintenance folks, and some landscapers who whoever they worked for didn't do the full range, so they might not have done some of the paving that we'll be teaching in it. So yeah, there's like a flexible paving course. So whereas if you're doing a repair, you might realise that what you're pulling up hasn't been installed properly. So then you can install it properly so that it won't happen again. So it's just little things like that. But it's not targeted at landscapers as much, even though some will do it.
Yeah, it's more targeted at maintenance people.
Yep, and DIY folks, yep.
Yeah, fair enough. So give me a quick crash course on this one. I've done a couple of paver repairs. Somebody's, like one of my customers has said, hey, we've got a couple of pavers that are lifted. And I've gone, all right, it's easy because it's lifted. I can get the corner of it, lift it out, chop out a root, and found it just had sand as the base. Smooth the sand over, make sure it sits flush, and drop it back in, and I'm done. That seems like a fairly straightforward thing. I don't need to do your course to do it. But at some stage, that ended up being, instead of one paver, about 20 pavers I needed to lift and tidy it up and put it all back in and make sure it was tidy. And then I got asked, there's a footpath here that's all pavers and it's all uneven. Can you redo the whole lot for us? And I'm like, no.
Yeah, that's sometimes that's a good thing to say no as well, because I like with landscapers we say yes to too many things. Like, while you're here, can you just do this as well? And you sort of, that's also how you learn to do a lot of things. So that's how you can increase your repertoire. But I reckon there'd be a lot of maintenance folks who would saying yes to things that they shouldn't do. They should just stick to doing maintenance. And landscapers are exactly the same. They'll say yes to just, can you just change this door on our laundry that's fallen off? So no worries, we can do that. And then you're not spending half a day there not allowing for it. So sometimes it's best to stay in your lane, but sometimes you also want to increase your skill set. So
yeah, that's one of the things that I've drawn the line at. If it's doing a door jam or something that's carpentry type work, it's like, well, hang on a minute, I'm not licensed for that. See you later.
Yeah, I find it's also things I just don't want to do. Like, I just no interest in doing certain things.
Yeah, and if it's a door jam in my own house, sure, I'll do it. But not somebody else. But going back to those paving jobs, right? So when I did one paver, didn't think twice about it. When I started lifting half a dozen pavers up to 20 pavers in a row where the route had shifted a whole row of pavers, it starts getting complicated because if they're laid offset, and I don't know the correct terminology, so you'll have to fill in for me here. If they laid offset, I lift one paver out and then I try and lift the next one out and it's wedged because they're offset. And so it's like, all right, I can get under there and wiggle it around. It'll eventually come out. But to try and get them back in again so that they're nice and neat and flush, it's like, is there a recommendation in terms of how to do that so that it works well? Or do you just have to fiddle with it and use a soft mallet and move things around a little bit?
Yeah, starting from the outside is the easiest way to do it. So then you're not chipping any corners. But because you don't, that's the worst thing. If you just say, "Oh, I'll just replace that one paver," and then you end up chipping the corner of it, and the rest of it's all dirty except that one corner looks brand new because it's been chipped back to the natural material. But sometimes pavers lift, and you think it's because of the root under there, but it could be the outsides are moving and sort of pushing it all together.
Yep.
So then it's creating like a bridge that's just sort of lifting up.
And then when you go and pull it back out, there is no way you can get it back in because they've all pushed.
Yeah. So sometimes you've got to trim it to get it back down. There's so many different reasons for pavers to move or lift.
Yeah, okay. So I guess the answer there is come and do your course.
If it's right. So, it's not for everyone. So I'm not like, and a lot of things that I'll be doing, you could just go on YouTube and find the same thing. So I've learned a lot of things on YouTube.
Yep. Yeah, and I know, having listened to a number of American podcasts, there's courses in America on pavers and various different landscaping jobs. I could go and jump on there and I can't remember. It's like pay $150 for one course, $500 for another course, various different options there. So your course is going to be similar to that for somebody like myself who's in maintenance who goes, I want to just broaden my skill set a little bit.
Exactly that, yeah. And also, like the benefit over doing mine rather than going onto YouTube is you get feedback as well. So, like, you could ask me questions as you're doing things.
Yeah,
so that's sort of the main benefit on it.
Awesome.
But it's still a couple of months from being able to come out because I've actually got to make it. So, all the paving, when I'm showing how to do paving, I'm actually laying the paving and filming it and then taking it home and editing it. So, there's still a bit to do.
Okay, nice. I know Luke Smith's busy putting course content together on his new platform he's been working on at the moment. So
that'll be a good one because I think it's his second or third episode that he did of the podcast is one of the best in terms of telling people how much they should be charging.
Yes.
I reckon it's a ripper.
He's done a couple of episodes like that now. So he did one, like you say, right up at the start, and then he waited 12 months and he went and asked the question again on the LMCA group. I don't know if you're aware of LMCA.
Yeah, heard about it a lot. I'm not a part of it, but
Oh,
sounds like an exciting, an action-packed group to be part of.
you should join in.
Oh. I think I get too many notifications by the sounds of it.
Oh, you can switch them off. I switch notifications off for most Facebook groups, and it's just jump in there when I'm looking for something, or jump in there when I've got 5 minutes to spare and see if I can help somebody else out. And that's the thing with LMCA. I'm sure there's probably a landscapers one as well.
Yeah.
But there's, I think, 7,000 people in the group now, and if you've got a bit of experience, you jump in there and somebody's asking a question, you're like, all right, I can help them, and it saves them from ruining their business, or helps them to just make themselves a little bit more efficient, learn their pricing like Luke does that, and then various different things. So you got, I think, two groups there, LMCA and then the professional contractors group as well, which they both offer a slight variation, but they're awesome for giving you that support in the industry.
Yeah, I reckon when you start an business, you've got to be a bit vulnerable and ask for that support rather than just trying to think you know everything.
Yeah.
Like, it makes a massive difference if you can find someone who can sort of be a bit of a mentor, get you through.
When I started my business, so not quite as long as you, I've been in business for 14 years. And I made contact with a couple of the local lawn contractors around here. And one of them was friendly, another one was like, go away, you're the enemy. Whereas you find a nice supportive group like this. And back then, there was a forum, because Facebook wasn't a thing.
Yeah.
Well, actually, Facebook was just starting back in 2010. But it was a case of going to an online forum and independent contractors group. Independent Mowing Contractors was the name of it. And it still exists, but it's just not as active with Facebook groups being around. It's so much easier to get on a Facebook group.
Yeah, I was going to say that there's still a lot of those style of forums that still exist, and there's still some good information. Like, I'll find a bit of it when I'm searching for questions to things.
Yeah, well, I think one of the things that Indie Mowers group or forum started back then was a collective with where to get your insurance, how to get you started on your business with an ABN, or find a independent mowing run that's for sale. So, yeah, a lot of useful tips on it back then. And yeah, nowadays LMCA and the Professional Contractors Group offer a lot of that advice and a lot of help, and also contacts with companies that can help you out. So if you want to get into fertilizers and broadleaf treatments and pre-emergence, all those things.
Are people in there trying to sell runs? Because that seems like a big thing in the lawn mowing world.
It does happen, yes. So I interviewed a guy down in South Australia, Matt Palfrey, and he specialises in buying lawn runs. So he started his business, built it up to a certain amount, and then he went and bought somebody else's lawn run to add and grow the business. And he's done that multiple times since then. So anybody asks me about buying a lawn mowing run, I'm like, hey, Matt Palfrey's in LMCA, look him up, have a chat to him. He knows everything you need to ask.
Yeah, and there'd be a fair bit, because it'd be quite an intimidating thing to do, I would have thought.
Yes. If you haven't done it before, it's very intimidating. But you can imagine, right, if I was fresh and thinking about starting a lawn care run, and I have a look in LMCA, got myself a business name and an ABN, and I look in there and I'm like, oh yeah, there's somebody looking at selling their run. I'm interested. They want $50,000. I don't want to spend $50,000. Can I negotiate? Oh, I don't know. Are they selling with equipment, or are they only selling the actual customers? And if they're selling the customers, what are they worth? Are they worth anything, or is it just a case of going, well, here's an address and a phone number, go and call them?
Yeah, and are they going to keep you on as well? Like, if you could buy their round, but they could. There's no contract or anything.
Yeah, so there's so many questions there. If you don't know, then you don't know. And somebody like Matt Palfrey is awesome to talk to. And the very short abbreviated version of what he will tell is that if you look at it like a business lead, if you get a lead from Jim's Mowing when you're a franchisee, you pay for the lead. So if you're going to buy a lawn care run from somebody that's independent, can you compare that to buying a lead from Jim's Mowing or buying a a run from a franchise where you've got a little bit more trust than an independent. So that gives you a little bit of a scale, and you're okay, well, is it worth as much? Are they going to do a handover? Do I need to put the prices up? There's a bunch of factors that Matt walks through in the episode I did with him that really helped to get a grasp on that. But, yeah.
Yeah, Luke just did a recent one where he was talking about, I think that was the one, his Anzac Day one maybe, where he's driving around with 3 other blokes.
Yep.
I think he was talking about whether you should be, some people say it's a certain, it's the run times 5 or whatever or something, and about how to try and work out how much a round is worth to buy.
It's really arbitrary.
Yeah.
So, yeah, run times 5 is one number that comes up, run times 4, run times 2, run times 1. Like if it's a cut value. So cut value is if I go and mow every customer once, how much money? That's cut value for your jobs. But then you go, okay, well, one customer's weekly, another one's fortnightly. The one that's fortnightly, they tell me to go away every other time I'm there. The one that's monthly, it might only be monthly, but that's $1,000 every time I turn up, whereas the other customers are $50, $80, $100. So all those factors need to come into it.
Yeah.
And then, there's so many things that can come into that. So I spend a lot of time talking to people about asking the question, how much is it for one cut? What's the frequency of cuts? So if it's one cut and they're fortnightly, that's probably going to be 20 cuts a year, maybe 21 cuts a year. Because you don't cut fortnightly all year round, which would be 26 cuts. So you drop 5 cuts off that, 6 cuts off that for winter, and that brings you back to roughly what the cut value of the property is for a whole year. If it's once a month, then that changes again, but it gives you that comparison value if you start looking at it from those different amounts. And in terms of calculating what you should be making for a business, you need to start looking at those different values, because somebody who's doing 10-minute jobs and they do 20 jobs a day is completely different to somebody who does one job and it takes all day. But they might both end up with $1,000 turnover for the day. And then you might go, all right, the guy who's done 20 jobs in one day, he's doing great, but he can't do that every day of the week. So even though he's got $1,000 income for the day, he might make $2,500 for the whole week because he just can't consistently get 20 jobs done a day. So you can see the comparisons between different amounts help you to really analyze business and analyze what something's worth.
Yeah. Yeah, I've had a couple of maintenance folks on my podcast as guests, and I've always been impressed with how good they are at managing their time and knowing what things cost and working everything out.
Yeah, well, I think that would be a massive difference between you and I, right? If you're talking about a landscaping job, you probably still need to do that. But a landscaping job, you might be on site for a week or a month or even a few months if it's a big job.
Yeah, the good people are good at doing that, but I'm not very good at working out how long things take, unfortunately.
Yeah. So I think the more accurate you are, the more you can fine-tune your costs and quotes, right?
Yeah.
So I know for me, and I've described this with maintenance, if you're doing a garden and you can tell the customer, I'm going to charge you hourly and I'm going to be there for 2.5 hours and that's what I'm charging you for, you can charge them $150 an hour. If they trust that what you're doing is accurate, the quote is accurate and the quality of work is great. But if you're a little bit unsure about how to manage your time or how long it's going to take you to do a job, and you can say, hey, this job is worth $2,000 or $150 because we get that much range easily in our business. But here's a picture of another job I've done and this is the quality of work I'm doing. I'm not going to make it look like it's a cowboy job. I'm going to make sure that it's comparable to the other jobs you see on my Instagram account here. Then again, they can trust you and go, well, I don't know how long it's going to take for this person to do the job, but I trust that the quality of work is going to match the quote. And I guess always this will come up in the maintenance business. You do a job and say it takes you half an hour to do and you send the customer an invoice for $200. They go, oh, $200? How long were they here? I don't want to pay $200 for half an hour. That's $400 an hour. I don't earn that. So customers will often look at a quote or a completed job and compare what they know to be a job rate with what they think the hourly rate is. And I can imagine that comes up for you too.
Yeah, but so when I'm doing a quote, I won't itemize it that deeply because for that exact reason, you're just inviting conversations and questions about what you're charging, and then you've got to explain to them, well, I've got to pay for my shed. I've got to space it out 220 days a year to pay for it, and blah blah blah. So that because if everyone takes their holidays and sick days and weekends and public holidays, that's how many work days there are. So it's rather than having to explain it to them. I just don't include that. But but there's a lot of times clients will get us in and then we start working and then they say, we were thinking of doing this ourselves, but I'm glad we didn't because you made it look so much easier than what it actually is. And having all the right tools as well is so important.
Yeah. And I've seen a number of social media memes or reels about the person who says, can you do a quote on this? And then the customer turns around and says, $800? That's a lot of money. I could do that for nothing, for $50. And the tradie turns around and says, well, yeah, you go ahead and do it then. And the customer's like, well, I don't have the machine. And the tradie's like, look, I'll hire you the machine for this much. And then they go through this big thing of explaining all their costs of their business through this meme. I found talking to Clint Adams last week, and I've talked to numerous people that come up with similar numbers. If it's a maintenance business, you look at the labour rate for a job and you go, okay, if I'm going to spend $1,000 on the labour cost, then I'm going to multiply that by 3 or 4 times to calculate my job rate. So straight up, I know that that's what it's worth for me to be in business. However big the job is as a maintenance job, labour rate, which is going to be about $30 an hour, maybe $25 to $35 an hour for me, up to $40, and then multiply that by 3, and that works pretty well for me. Clint was saying multiply it by 4 for some of his businesses. But in your instance, you'd go, all right, labour rate, multiply it by 3, and then add some materials.
Yeah, it's a tricky one because not everyone needs to charge the same amount either because you've got different expenses,
of course,
different overheads. Yeah. But I don't have any square meterage rates or anything like that. I'll work everything out individually because there's so many things that change, and it's also important for the last few years to keep track on how much materials are because they've been going up. I assume it's the same for fertilizers and sprays as well.
Oh yeah,
So you don't want to just have your meterage rates unless you're checking how much everything costs.
Yeah, definitely. And that's had a massive impact. I know going through COVID, things like Roundup, just supply and demand changed the price. So instead of it being $150 for a 20-litre drum of Roundup, it went up to $400 or $500 for a drum.
Yeah, right.
And fortunately for me, Roundup's not a massive expense. So if I spend $150 on Roundup for a whole year and then I spend $500 on Roundup for the whole year, that doesn't affect my overall business. It has a very, very minor impact. So I can absorb it, or I can go, if I'm going to put my prices up by the amount that I need to cover that Roundup, then my hourly rate's going to go from $90 to $90.50.
Yeah.
But other people who spray Roundup every day or other chemicals every day, and they're going, well, it went from $150 to $500, they got to multiply their expense ratio to make sure they're hitting the numbers right.
Yeah. Well, I assume we're in the same risk. I don't know what it's like in New South Wales with work cover and the workers' compensation, but in Victoria, I assume maintenance people might even be on a higher risk category than what we are. But that the cost of work cover just went up 43%. In the last period. So there was no consultation about that. It was just, here's your invoice, 43% more.
I have that iCare letter sitting right there in front of me.
Right.
Yeah. Yes, and they all went up. So it's crazy. I looked at it and I'm going, I need to have a real close look at how much I am putting in my workers' comp quote, because they ask you for the amount of wages that you pay each year for your estimate for the future year and the accurate amount you paid for last year. And I'm like, I need to go and double check that and make sure it's right.
Yep. It's a tricky one because if you put it too high, you estimate it too high, then you got to pay a lot.
Yeah.
But if you do it too low, then you've got to pay more later on. So
Yes, that's right. It'll sting you if you don't report it right, and then you report your more accurate one at the end of the financial year or when you do your new billing period.
yeah, it depends on your cash flow. If your cash flow is looking good, you've reported a bit higher than when you have to pay it. So then it's almost like forced savings. You can get that money back later,
True. Yeah, that's worth doing.
but not much interest, I don't believe, from them.
No, I don't think you'll get interest. Yeah, even if you're a big business and your workers' comp was in the millions, I'm sure it wouldn't amount to interest.
No, don't think, not a cent.
But then again, if your workers' comp is in the $1 million policy range, then somebody else is going to be doing that calculation for you. Efficiency is the thing that rules a business and the decisions you make as a small business owner. Right Mowers give you the options in their product lineup to match efficiency with size, fuel usage, and the type of jobs you want to target, from catching to mulching or side discharge, from roadside verges to acreages, and manicured lawns to 6 feet tall and super long. I've been using the Right Stander I 42-inch with a Catch Pro for manicured areas and the Stander ZK61 to maximise productivity for large open acreage mowing. If you need to replace your push mower, try the 32-inch Stander B. If you have more open access to residential properties, there's a 42 through to 48-inch option that suits you. And if you want to enter the acreage market, the 52, 61 and 72-inch machines have choices in engine size and model type to suit the work you want it to do. Right Standards go the distance, saving you time and money season after season. I've done 145 episodes. I think Clint Adams was 145 I put out yesterday. And I have learnt more from talking to those 145 people than what I could ever have learnt by just smashing them out and doing it on my own. Yeah. So like I said earlier, LMCA, the group, and the Australian Professional Contractors Group, they're awesome for going to somebody else and asking a question. But just simply talking to people like you, talking to Clint Adams, talking to other people who I know are going to speak to a particular topic, I have learnt huge amounts from that. And Luke Smith is one of those ones, which has been really good as well. But I started my podcast in 2020. So when did you start yours?
I think it was 2021, but I had a period last year where I was doing Q&As as an episode as well. So I was doing 2 episodes a week.
Wow.
So I'd put up a Q&A box on the Instagram and get people to ask questions, then I'd answer it on a Instagram live.
Yeah.
And also, and record it while I was doing that. So that was an episode that came out midweek.
Yeah.
So I'm at your episode's coming out next week when we're recording this, and that'll be 192.
192. Well, awesome.
So yeah, just coming out. It was almost bang on 3 years. I think pretty sure it was May that I started.
May in 2021.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. All right. So I'd have to double check when I started mine. I have a feeling it's similar timing, but I know I said 2020, but I'm just trying to think. It might have been.
Have you had any big spells or anything?
No, I've done once or twice where I've done 2 episodes in a week, but most of the time it's been one a week every week, and right through Christmas and everything like that. I think this last Christmas I took 1 week off and just didn't put one out, but every other time it's just walked right through. So yeah. Yeah, okay. So you started yours, you've done 180 odd episodes. And what brought you to the point where you wanted to start it?
Because I love listening to podcasts and listen to a lot of the same ones that you listen to.
Yeah.
And then I heard a plant nerd, because I like plant nerds, like people who are really passionate about plants.
Yeah.
I find them fascinating to listen to.
AKA horticulturists.
Yeah, that's also what they're called, yeah. The more PC name. But
plant nerds, great, love it.
Yeah, they like it as well, the real ones.
Yeah.
But I heard someone, a plant nerd interviewed and was fascinated by it. And then there's a guy I know who worked on Better Homes and Gardens. Like, he's a researcher, so he's behind the scenes, but he sort of gives all the answers to the on-air talent.
Oh, yeah.
So I wanted to hear him interviewed because he's, real passionate man about his plants. So I thought I was going to recommend him. Unfortunately, I can't remember which podcast it was that I heard him on, but I was going to recommend him to him, and then I thought, no, I'll just might do it myself. He's in New South Wales, so in Wollongong. So I decided I was going to do all the podcasts in person, like outside, because it's a landscaping podcast, so outside makes sense.
Yeah.
So I bought all heaps of equipment and then organised a bunch of other interviews on the same weekend. So I was on a Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And then drove up to New South Wales, did all those interviews, and then that were my first 5 or 6 episodes.
Okay.
It was amazing the feedback early on about how people loved listening to it because they could relate to hearing the same other people going through the exact same issues as what they go through in business. And then later on, you're hearing some of the biggest names in the industry, and they started out designing and not charging anything for a design, just like everyone else does when they start out. So it's been really relatable for a lot of people. And then I hit a bit of a wall sort of around 60 or 70 episodes. I just couldn't be bothered anymore, but I'm very competitive, so I thought I'll have to get to 100 episodes and I'll do 100 and then that'll do. But then rediscovered the passion for it. So, because I don't like booking the guests, but love it when I am talking. So, the only thing I don't like is organising it, but couldn't love it anymore when you actually talk to someone. They're not all killers, the episodes. Like every now and then you get some that aren't as great as the rest, but they're all got people learn something from every one, I think.
Yeah, I'd say I'm largely the same as you. I'm the sort of person who, when I started it took me a lot to get over the sound of my own voice. But after that, like you, it's like the booking it and chasing people, trying to get them in for an interview is a real headache. And so many people are like, nah, don't want to do it, or I'm not the right person for you.
Yeah.
And it's like, come on, yes, you are. I had that earlier today, actually. I messaged somebody and she's like, I really don't think it'd be that interesting. And then she explained why. And I said, that makes it so interesting.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny you say that you didn't like the sound of your voice because the episode that I've just released today, actually, he's another podcaster from the Plants Grow Here podcast.
Yeah.
And he didn't like the sound of his voice so much of the first 3 episodes that he redubbed himself asking the questions over those episodes before he released them. So he was sort of listening to the person speaking, and then he'd hear what his question was, and then he'd record himself asking that question again in a different tone of voice that he liked better. So yeah,
that's funny.
Everyone thinks they sound different.
Well, I fairly early on bought a Rodecaster Pro, so I could sit in my dungeon here and have all the good quality gear and do it over Zoom, or in this case, Zencaster, if anyone wants to look up recording software and start doing it themselves. Zencaster is what I use. But I spent big money on a microphone, and the first microphone I bought was crappy. It sounded terrible. And then I bought another one, and I ended up buying this one here, which is an RE20. And it makes me sound sultry and sexy and sort of mellows out my voice, takes out the nasalness, makes it sound a little bit nicer. And then I went and bought a Rode NT1 because it's one of the best quality mics you can buy, but it replicates your voice exactly accurate. So if you have a look at the curve on the microphone, it doesn't vary from the actual values of the sound that it's recording. It is spot on. And I've used it, but I really don't like the sound of my own voice. So this makes me sound better.
All right. So you've got one that you bought a microphone and you don't use it because you don't like the sound of it because it's too real.
Too accurate, yeah.
Yeah.
I was actually thinking about pulling it back out the other day because I'm like, all right, this one, now that I'm getting used to the sound of my own voice, I'm at 145 episodes, so not quite as many as you. I'm like, okay, it's starting to sound a little flat. And even if I do that uptone on the voice, it just flattens it out.
Yeah. I reckon most people overthink themselves, and 99% of the people listening wouldn't notice a thing that you notice.
Yeah, well, it's funny you say that because it is really true. But you get the odd person here and there who's like, did you do something different on that episode? And I'm like, yeah, I did. And even then, they may have a crack at trying to guess what it was, but most of the time they're way off.
Yeah.
But that other microphone, I'm tempted to pull it back out and do a couple of episodes and see if anyone notices the difference. So now that I'm saying that, they'll be listening for it.
You got to leave it a few episodes extra.
Yeah, that's right.
But yeah, it depends on who your most important person is for the podcast. Like if it's the audience, then you do what you want. But if it's you, then that's it depends who it's for.
Yeah, and you and I are both the same here, right? Like the purpose of our podcast is to tell somebody else's story. So it's not about me. It's about going, okay, who am I interviewing? How can I portray that for the listener? How can I make sure that the listener's going, oh, Joel Barnett, I need to look up his podcast, or I need to follow him on Instagram. And it's Instyle Gardens on Instagram, right?
Yep.
And it's help me get this right because I don't have it in front of me, the Landscaper podcast.
Landscaping podcast.
Landscaping.
Very, very creative name.
Well, it works, right? And if you're
Podcast
looking up the
family.
Landscaping podcast, then you've just got to make sure it's Australian and you're in the right path.
Yep. But well, I'm very selfish with my podcast as well. Like I do it for myself. Like I just talk to people that I want to talk to.
Yeah.
And record it. So if someone else likes it, good. If they don't, they can talk to whoever they want in the industry.
Yeah, fair enough. I like to think I'm doing it for the greater good, right? Got a little bit of Christian approach and just a little bit of altruism in there and, a bit of ego. And it's like, okay, if I'm helping people that listen to the podcast to build their businesses more successfully, then I feel like I've achieved something useful. But yeah, like you, I'm always looking at going, what would I want to listen to? If it's about my business and I want to make my business better, then I need to talk to people who are going to help me. So yeah, I think that aiming for both of those things helps me to put out better content.
Yep.
But going back to that,
listen to your early episodes to hear what you sounded like.
I've had a couple of people ask about that, and I'm like, don't go back and listen to my first episode.
I thought I'd been pretty consistent, and then I went back and listened to it and thought, wow, it sounds like it's from the 80s.
It's funny, isn't it? And I know you mentioned that you bought a lot of expensive equipment to go in the field and do it. Do you still use that?
No, I just use Zoom and that's it. Because that was one of the bad things about it, because I had to get the audio levels right. Because I had a mixer with the microphones and and regardless of, I'd get it right and then I'd do the next episode. Everything had stayed the same and the sound had to get changed all again. I got no idea about it. So
I've started looking at doing a couple of interviews in the field because I did one when I went on a trip to Fiji, a personal trip, and I was like, I can make this a business trip. I'll record an interview with the gardener at the hotel. And it was terrible. I've actually put it on YouTube if you want to look it up. Don't do it. So then I bought more recently an Osmo Pocket 3 Pro. I don't know what the number is. Look it up, DJI product. And it comes with it's a camera. It comes with a microphone that you put on your shirt. And then I've bought the DJI Mic Pro as well, and that's got 2 mics, and you can plug that into the camera. And then I've got 3 wireless mics that go into that one camera. So I could, zoom down to, not Melbourne, Geelong, find Joel and somebody else, and we could all sit in the same place in front of the camera. It does face tracking and sit there and have a conversation. And I don't have to worry about balancing the mics. All I've got to do is make sure the camera's not pointing straight into the sun.
Yep. Yeah, I've got their Rode mics, and with the lavalier attachment as well. So they're pretty subtle. And I did an episode at the garden show where I was walking around talking to everyone. So
yeah,
that worked pretty well. The quality is obviously not as good as if I'm sitting in a room with a better quality microphone, but it's good enough.
Yeah, and that's why I've set my dungeon up the way that I have. My dungeon, I've explained this to a few people, but I'm sitting in a room that doesn't have an external window in the house, so that's why it's the dungeon. And you can see behind me there's a couple of bright colours on the wall. That's just some sound insulation that I got from Bunnings. They're a felt board, and they come in multiple colours. So I've got white, yellow, blue, green, purple, red, and grey. And I thought I had a black one as well, but I don't see black, no. And that means that you don't hear a lot of rattles and bangs and carrying on. It just absorbs all of the noises. It keeps the dog barking to a minimum. So, yeah, the best sound quality ever is by being in a room recording over software. And the software makes your voice at the other end sound better too.
Oh, good.
So it does all the audio balancing, makes sure we're at the same volume, it makes sure we sound nice, and makes life so much easier.
Listen to how I sound on yours compared to my own one because they're recorded on different apps.
Yeah, be interesting for you to listen back and see what you think.
I hope it's not better because then I'll have to change it.
I hope it is better. But yeah, I actually have a video clip from the Osmo 3 I'm going to post up soon, so you'll have to have a look at that and see what you think too.
Yeah.
And that's outdoors, so you get a bit of outdoor noise and background noise and all that sort of thing. But I think the quality is still pretty decent.
Cool. And more equipment I'll have to buy.
Well, it sounds like your Rode mic is they're pretty decent. I think the difference between that and the DJI mic is very negligible in terms of quality.
Yep. Yeah, that's what I'm doing to record the course, is using that and just the cameras that I got for it.
Yeah. Nice. Well, look forward to seeing that come on. Is it going to be something that you put on a website or up on YouTube or?
It'll be on a website, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Yep.
Nice.
So you go in there and just do it at your own pace.
Yeah, I'll have to look it up and get you to share some details once you get it online so that we can point people to it.
Yep, will do. I don't have any ads on my podcast.
Yeah.
But when I have it up and running, I'll be preaching about it a lot. So,
well, yeah, you want all your listeners to buy it, don't you?
Yeah, that'd be nice.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, okay. Well, Joel, it's been great talking to you. I think we've covered a lot, and I've taken up almost an hour and a half of your time, so I really appreciate it.
I appreciate having me on. I know Clint would have said the same thing. Like, he loves being a guest on the podcast, and I'm exactly the same. Like, I love doing it, but also like being a guest as well. So thank you for having me on. Yeah,
no worries. I've been meaning to chase you for ages, and it's like, all right, I wonder if Joel Barnett would talk to me. And then you reached out to me, and I was like, oh, beauty.
A few people have said that. I reach out to them first, and I say, I've been meaning to talk to you.
Yeah.
They're the easy wins, though, to reaching out to another podcast, because they'll always say yes.
Well, that's very true. It'd be strange for them to say, "Oh no, I'm not talking to you."
Probably not the right person. I don't like podcasts.
That's it.
Thank you for listening to Aussie LawnStars. Please remember to rate and review the show on the Apple Podcasts app or the player you use. Exciting new shows are released every Monday. Make sure you follow or subscribe to hear the next episode.